Hey everyone, Wes here, and I hope you're having a good day. And I just wanted to give everyone in our community a huge thank you for helping us reach 2,000 subscribers on YouTube. It has been quite a journey, and nowhere in my mind back in 2019 when we first started did I think we were going to reach this point and that our channel was going to get this much attention. It has been something. I've learned a ton since 2019. My editing and videos has definitely become a lot better. If you go and watch our videos from back then, you'll see that my editing is pretty poor, but it's definitely come a long way since then. I've learned a lot in beekeeping. I've learned that you can keep bees sustainably and it can be easy and you don't have to suffer loss after loss after loss every year. And beekeeping can be enjoyable, and I've definitely learned that. And I've tried to make it a highlight of this channel to teach others that beekeeping can be easy and it can be simple. And we want to reach out to as many people as we can, and we've reached out to so many already. And I'm just so thankful to have everyone as part of this channel. I thank you for all the times you've liked our videos, all the times you've watched our videos. I thank you for all the nice comments you've left. It always puts a smile on my face when I see those comments. And it's just been quite a journey. And I'm so thankful. I want to give a big shout out to my mom and her husband, Alan. This is their farm that we keep bees on. And, I help take care of this farm for them. And we take care of the bees and everything. But without them, none of this would be possible. I mean, without them, this whole YouTube channel wouldn't exist. And so a big thank you to them, and I'm so thankful to them for that. And I'm so thankful to everybody that's watched our videos, and I'm very happy that we've come this far. We're going to keep going. We're going to keep recording videos. We're going to keep doing instructions and reaching as many people as we can, and just telling people that sustainable beekeeping can be done. It doesn't have to be impossible, and anybody can do it. So we're going to keep rolling with that. If you want to support us, I would tell you that please check out our Patreon page. We just got monetized with YouTube, so we're collecting off YouTube. But it's not hardly anything, and so really we get most of our funding through Patreon. And so with the Patreon funding, we basically can go and buy new trees and stuff for the bees. We can buy new tools and stuff for beekeeping, and it just makes our lives a lot easier. And if you go to our Patreon, there's all kinds of cool stuff you can get. There's a lot of behind the scenes content you can get, and you can see some other stuff that we don't show on the YouTube channel. You can get your name put on one of our hives. We're basically signing names of our Patreon members on our hives, and so you can be seen through that. Also, you can have a personalized thank you letter and a piece of comb sent to you through the mail, and I'll thank you personally and I'll sign it and everything, and we'll do that. And then you'll also have your name in our credits on the end of all of our videos. And so if you want to be a supporter, if you want to help us build this even bigger, please check out our Patreon page. The link is in the description. And again, thank you so much for this 2,000 subscribers. I'm so thankful to all of you for helping us reach this point. And without further ado, let's get to our video. Good afternoon, beekeepers and bee enthusiasts. How you doing? It's another great day at the farm. And we're hanging out. It's another day in January. It's almost February. It's still cold outside, but it's not as cold today. And it's pretty windy out here. But it's a great day. And of course, we've got another great video planned for you today. And of course, today we're talking about the lifestyles of the honeybee during the winter time. Now, a lot goes into colony upkeep for honeybees during the wintertime, and a lot goes into them surviving. And if you didn't know, honeybees survive as a colony throughout the wintertime. So whereas a lot of other insects, such as hornets, they won't survive as a colony going into the wintertime. They will basically, I'm pretty sure they will perish. The queen will survive. She'll go and dig a hole somewhere and then come back up in the spring. And that's how a lot of insects do it. But with honeybees, they will actually survive as a colony. And the colony will stick together, and they need each other to survive. They can't survive without a good winter cluster. And it's going to be a great video. There's a lot of cool information that I want to talk about today. It's going to be really neat. We know you're going to love it. And without further ado, let's break right into it. So what is going on the inside of a beehive during the wintertime? I mean, these bees They don't have a nice, beautiful wood stove or a nice electric heater or a nice warm electric blanket. They don't have any of these things to survive. So when it gets down to 0 degrees outside, how are these bees surviving? How are they staying alive in the winter? Well, we know that bees survive in the winter by consuming honey in the winter cluster. Now, if you don't know what the winter cluster is, it is basically a big ball of bees that huddle together when it gets cold outside, and they slightly shiver and they slightly consume honey over time, and they do this to stay warm. And they do stay warm because we know that on the inside of a cluster, the temperature is around 64 degrees, which is adequate for honeybees in the wintertime. Now, if temperatures get as low as 43 degrees or less, the honeybees can perish. But if they can keep it warmer than that, and ideally around 64 degrees, they can stay warm enough and they can survive throughout the winter. Now, what we do know about honeybees in the winter cluster is for one thing, they will consume honey individually as bees. Now, they do not feed each other in the cluster. So as they're in this big ball of bees, everybody is taking turns getting on the honey frame and consuming a little bit of honey and then backing away and let other bees get there and consume honey. And everybody's taking turns to do this so that they can all stay alive. So every individual bee is having to consume honey by themselves. Now, the really cool thing that we know is a study taken, and this was quoted by Lazutin in his book, Keeping Bees with a Smile. A study was taken that basically said a hive of 12,000 bees would consume about 29 grams of honey per day. On the other hand, a hive of about 30,000 bees would consume 37 grams of honey per day. So it's 12,000 consuming 29 grams versus 30,000 consuming 37 grams. And what does this tell us? This tells us that the bigger the cluster, then the less amount of honey each individual bee has to consume. So it really helps to have bees that can be larger in number going into the cluster, because if they're a smaller number, they consume more honey, they're less efficient with heat. And so having a bigger colony going into the winter time is a lot better, and they have a much higher chance of survival. Now, the cool thing about what they do when they sit on these frames is the honeybees will basically sit on their cluster, and they will kind of be in this general area. Now, there's no bees on the inside of this hive, but I'm just giving you an idea. But the cluster would basically be in this area. And basically, they will start in the wintertime on the bottom side of the frame. And the cluster, as the winter progresses, they will move up every single day and consume honey moving upward. And that's what they will do. Now, we know that they will move upward about 1 millimeter a day as far as distance goes. And they will move, which 1 millimeter a day is about 1.2 inches a month. So they move about 1.2 inches a month, which means for your honeybee colony, you want to have a good 6 inches of honey on top of the cluster for them to be able to move up throughout the winter. If they've got a good 6 inches, maybe more if they need it, then they do a lot better, and they can make it through the winter a lot easier. So that's about how much space they move per day. Now, another thing you need to know is a lot of people will fill up their hives all the way with honey frames, and they'll say, okay, I'm giving my bees a ton of honey and I'm feeding them a bunch, so they should be fine, right? Like, obviously, if I fill the whole hive up with frames, then they should be a lot better off and they shouldn't run out of honey. But honeybees in the wintertime, they will shift upward on a frame or a few frames or pieces of comb. They will not shift over in comb during the wintertime. They will not go to multiple frames over. So you, by putting a bunch of frames of honey on the inside, if you have too much of an excess, you're just putting something else in the hive that is going to take more energy to heat, if that makes sense. So really, you don't want to have too many frames of honey for your bees. You want to have just enough frames, and we do 7 frames, which is about this much over. And that gives the colony just enough space where they can move up the frame little by little and consume enough honey. And of course, if you have nice deep frames, they have a lot more space to move on, and they do a lot better on that. Now, some of you are probably thinking, Wes, if the cold can be an issue for the bees and they have to put up with this, then couldn't I do something as simple as taking them and putting them inside of a building and basically keeping them warm that way? And it might seem like that could work in some way or form. However, honeybees actually rely on the moisture that is outside and then the outside air to liquefy their honey during the wintertime. So they need that moisture to liquefy the honey. And if you put them on the inside of a building or inside of a shed somewhere, if it's too dry and warm, then the bees will actually start to freak out and panic, and they will actually try to exit the hive because they need that moisture in order to liquefy the honey. And it's just something they have to have. So, I know putting them on the inside of a building might seem like a good idea, but really being on the outside is the best for bees. And it's really what you should do. You should always keep your bees outside, at least in a nice, cozy, warm hive. So now, one big thing we got to talk about is, of course, February and March. Now, and we're approaching this time right now, but in February and March is actually the riskiest point for honeybees because in this time, they're actually at their lowest point in their food stores. They're getting low in their food stores, and it's almost all gone. And the other thing that comes into play is in February, March, that is when the queen will start to lay eggs. Now, remember I told you that in the wintertime, the bees have to keep the cluster at 64 degrees, and that's what they aim to do, and that's enough to sustain them. Well, in order to heat eggs and to heat the brood that the queen is laying, the hive must be kept at 95 degrees. So it's a lot different, about 31 more degrees warmer than it needs for winterization. So this is the riskiest part of the year, okay? And this is when a lot of colonies can get lost, but, again, that's just part of the survival. So, when it comes to her laying eggs and everything, that is the hard point because it's a lot trickier to keep that hive at 95 degrees, especially when you know as well as I do, in February, March, you can have those cold days. I mean, we've had near 5-10 degrees in February before. So it can be a big problem for the bees, but they always find a way to survive, or at least the strong colonies do. They find a way to make it. And guess what? On warmer days, kind of like today, if you get near this hive and you go and check it out, you can actually find a few bees coming and going out of the hive. And I believe they're going to get like a drink of water or something like that. And you can actually go see it. And so let's go check it out right now. So winterization is pretty cool, and the bees go through a lot to survive. And based off what I've told you, you can tell that honey is basically what they need to survive, and they totally rely on it, and it's very important in their survival. And that is why they produce honey in the spring, summer, and fall, is for the sole purpose of surviving in the wintertime. So it's very important for them, and a lot goes into it. I love the science behind it, but the bees are always really cool, and they're very fascinating, and this is why I love talking about them. So they're pretty cool. So you make sure you stay warm during this wintertime. Get you a nice blanket, form up in a cluster, whatever you got to do, but stay warm. And until next time, we'll see you soon.